Immortal love, forever full, forever flowing free, forever shared, forever whole, a never ebbing sea. That's the words we just heard, part of them. Belief in that immortal love takes some faith. It takes faith when every day the news is full of violence and hatred. It takes faith when we know that innocent beings are suffering and we see division and oppression all around us. This month of February, we have been exploring the theme of love and thinking about how we keep our faith in love immortal. A couple of weeks ago, we explored the ongoing evolution of our UUA bylaws and the possibility that love will be at the center of our new shared covenant. Unitarian Universalists rely on covenant and on our shared values to hold us together. 150 years ago, Unitarian minister James Vila Blake wrote this covenant for his congregation in Evanston, Illinois, where they still use it, and many other UU churches, including First Universalists, do as well. It says, "Love is the spirit of this church, and service is its law. This is our great covenant, to dwell together in peace, to seek the truth in love, and to help one another." Unlike some covenants, this one really stands the test of time. It centers love. So I got to wondering this week, when was the last time I preached on love? And I realized that actually I never have. I thought, well, that's strange. How did I miss that little subject? It's the center of what we do here. But I think I haven't been drawn to this big, obvious exploration of love because the word has become so overused that it's become a cliche. I love your new shoes. I love this piece of cake. I mean, perhaps it's a bit strong. It's a good piece of cake, but love? Love is a subjective idea. You can't quite touch it or describe it. And it means something different to every person. In fact, I would guess that it means something different to each person each day. My first reaction to this new proposed UUA graphic as our new bylaw covenant was much the same. My first reaction was, those words don't really hold us to anything. They aren't specific enough to give us guidance. But the more I studied the new graphic, the more I realized that in our non-creedal faith, that's actually the point. We don't proclaim to have the objective truth. We don't give people instructions for living, but instead we are a people of discussion and interpretation and experimenting with these elusive and subjective words. Words are meant to guide us, to point us towards something that resonates. They're meant to encourage us to spend a lifetime experimenting with what it means to live into love, justice, equity, evolution, pluralism and diversity, interdependence, and generosity. As we pull back from our cultural dependency on the written word, we are invited to use these values to guide our spiritual paths, whether or not they're adopted. This is still an interesting graphic for us to meditate on and think about. And in the context of our spiritual community, love is a word that symbolizes a certain purity of heart, a connectedness. It guides us towards a graceful willingness to live and let live. In the past, here we've explored together many ways to find our faith in love as a guiding force of the universe. We've talked about finding our quiet center, cultivating awe and wonder, slowing down, noticing nature and children, listening deeply to others. But there's another very practical route to finding and nurturing our faith in love immortal. And that path lies in our choices of how we respond to the world and each other. Michelle Obama said, "When they go low, we go high." So we preachers are careful about politics in the pulpit, And it's funny because when our administrator, Sarah, tried to boost our Facebook ad promoting this week's sermon, the algorithms blocked the ad because the words Michelle Obama were flagged as political. But what I want to say about our former First Lady, Michelle Obama, today has nothing to do with politics. It has everything to do with her decisions about how she approaches life and other people, her attitude, and her kindness. In 2016, Michelle and her husband, former President Barack Obama, went on the campaign trail to support Hillary Clinton's bid for president. Michelle gave a speech where she talked about raising her daughters in the public eye, and she said, quote, "We explained to them that when someone is cruel or acts like a bully, you don't stoop to their level. No, our motto is, when they go low, we go high." Now, unfortunately, the Obama family has had a lot of opportunities to practice this. As the first Black family in the White House, they bore the brunt of constant public cruelty during those 8 years and beyond. Can you imagine what it must have been like, or what it must still be like, to have all that hatred and vitriol aimed in your family's direction year after year? Most of us can't even imagine that level of malice. Terrible things have been said about their family. And if the Obamas let the bullies get them down, they could easily have succumbed to fear and anger. They've had to have some pretty effective strategies to maintain their emotional, spiritual, and even physical health in the face of all that hate. I'm sure they had their moments where it got to them, but for the most part, their family has managed to stay kind in the face of relentless racism and hatred, and when others go low, they go high. And even if we don't live in the public eye, even if we don't suffer the scourge of racism, still we all, each and every one of us, have to find strategies for feeding our souls with love and tolerance in this world. Ultimately, our faith in love immortal is nurtured and fed by our actions, by our responses, by staying grounded in kindness and forgiveness, even when the arrows are flying at us. There's an old saying I learned once, I believe it's a Buddhist teaching, and it's, "Let the arrows fall like feathers at your feet." So I looked for a source of that saying, and I couldn't find it anywhere. So I was forced to conclude that I must have made it up, but I didn't, actually. "Let the arrows fall like feathers at your feet" has been a great guide to me over the years, because it doesn't suggest that we duck or we cower in fear, but we don't let the arrows pierce us. Instead, we maintain our groundedness, our non-anxious presence as we observe others and cultivate a spiritual armor that is impenetrable to the hurt that others fling at us. Because hurt people, and there are a lot of hurting people in our world. Because even if we bring together the most sincere and good-hearted humans, still sometimes we will hurt each other. Most of the time it's not intentional, but even here in our church, where we covenant to respect the worth and dignity of each person, there are still times when we fall short. And if we are the ones on the receiving end of those arrows, often we want to react and punish the other person to make them feel the shame and the hurt that their words or actions ignited in us. But we have strategies for not reacting, for going high when others go low. Take a breath before you hit send on a reactionary email. Ask a question rather than make an accusation. Make your default mode forgiveness, even when people don't ask for it, even when they don't understand the impact of their actions. We set firm boundaries about what we will allow going forward, but we also refuse to go to war. War is just a waste of energy. Retaliation doesn't really change the other person. It might cause them some upset or humiliation, and we might get a little hit off that from our lower selves, but ultimately staying centered in our love immortal is true strength. Whether or not you like the Obama family, I think most of us can appreciate that they really have let the arrows fall like feathers at their feet. They take the high road, and we can do that too. We can refuse to triangulate. That means airing our grievances with a third party rather than speaking directly to the person who is upsetting us. We can be curious. We can be compassionate rather than vengeful. So I had a class in seminary called Walking the Talk, where we learned some of these skills. And our textbook is called Crucial Conversations. It's a book anybody could read. And it gave us some useful tools to learn how to stay grounded and communicate with difficult people. So, I have this neighbor who's lived behind me the last 10 years, and his house looms over my backyard, and he has a lot of spare time that he spends perfecting his backyard landscaping and lamenting over mine. So, when I was in Chicago at seminary, he called the city of Lakewood because my chickens were too close to his fence. And then he told me he hadn't called, but he was speaking to me about it first. But he didn't realize that I already had the notice from the city to move my chicken run away from the property line. In a friendly voice that day, he asked me some personal questions that were thinly veiled misogynist microaggressions. At the time, my neighbor's favorite political candidate had won the office of president, and I was slogging through my way at seminary in an attempt to fight everything that candidate stood for, and I was not in the mood for this guy peeking over my fence and stirring up trouble. I was tempted to take the low road, but I was in seminary, So the end of the semester came, and it was time to write my final paper that required me to have 2 crucial conversations with someone I was having trouble communicating with, and to write my final paper about it. I knew that my neighbor was the person I needed to have the courage to stand up to, but without reactivity, to take the high road. So you can only imagine how excited I was to call my neighbor and ask him to have 2 crucial conversations with me. I briefly considered dropping out of seminary and just forgetting the whole thing, but in the end, I did it. And in fact, I did not die from the experience, and I stand here today a little tougher, a little wiser, a little more confident and skilled from having faced my fears and trusted myself to let the arrows fall like feathers at my feet, because ultimately there is enough war in this world. There are things we can control and things we can't. And my neighbor says that he plans to live in his house for the rest of his life, and he's about my age, so that could be a while. And I'm not planning on going anywhere. And in some ways, it's a good container. It forced us to work it out. Of course, I did get the ultimate revenge. I brought a pig home about a year later. That ought to teach him, right? No, I didn't do it out of revenge. So as a testament to crucial conversations, we've had that pig 2.5 years, and he hasn't said a thing. I'm actually sort of worried. Like, there's a pig back here. So here at Columbine, we have crucial conversations. We do it regularly. We do it on the board. We do it with our lay leaders, our staff. I have to have them. You sometimes have to have them with me. People have had to say, Reverend Jenny, you hurt my feelings. You upset me. And I have to say, even though I have that initial stab of like, oh gosh, shame, that if I can just live through that moment of discomfort and reach out and listen to the other person, it always, 100% of the time, has led to closeness, intimacy, appropriate intimacy, into love, into a more loving environment where both people leave a conversation feeling like, whew, that was hard, but I did the right thing, and that's why we're here. So there are times that I don't want to pick up that phone or have that meeting, and I feel a deep resistance with every cell in my body. There are moments where we get each of us make a choice, not just here at church, but in all of our lives, war or peace. high road or low road. Let the arrows shoot us down or lean into our covenants. Because our UU covenants are there to help us have the courage to have faith in love immortal and to have faith in choosing the high road, to practice respecting the inherent worth and dignity of each and every person and building the world we want to live into. The wonderful 7 people who joined our church today have made a commitment to join us in doing that hard work of loving each other. And each of you who showed up here today is willing to take that risk. And we know that for all the fun of the auction and the wonderful loving care of the care team and the laughter and the easy moments in our community, we also hurt each other. And we will need to be grounded in love and courage to keep coming back and keep choosing the high road, one breath and one step at a time. Blessed be, and may it be so.